Very good morning to you. Welcome to the Morning Brief right here on Channels Television. I'm Jeffrey Uzama.
And of course, April winds down ever so beautifully. Welcome to your perfect morning starter on Channels TV. I am Bukola Koka.
And live from the nation's capital, I'm Kayode Okikelu. Good morning.
And of course, Bukola, so what have you been tracking? I have a lot I've been looking at lately. So what have you been tracking?
It was a weekend of political events from Ibadan to Lagos State to, of course, the Federal Capital Territory, where we see that the Deputy Governor and other party leaders in the state paid a consultation visit to the Chief of Staff to the President and former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila. And of course, it's ahead of the 2027 general elections. And evidently, the signs are all there. The state deputy governor is, looking to enter the race. And the chief of staff to the president, being the most senior party man in the state, appears the right man, to go to for the elders' wisdom, according to the state's deputy governor. And perhaps we could also say that he has the ears of the president and commander-in-chief of the armed forces, who, by the way, has held sway in Lagos politics since 1999. We haven't seen any other party win that governorship seat in Lagos State. And so perhaps that could be the next Lagos State governor if they go by the consensus arrangement provided for in the new Electoral Act 2026. But of course, there are all the other political events that came through over the weekend. We also saw all opposition parties converge on Ibadan for the Opposition Party Summit, during which they issued a communique. And, top on that communique is that they're going to present one candidate. So what does that mean? Of course, we'll have someone come through to answer that very big question, what it means for 2027, guys.
Interesting times ahead. I love political competition. I love an atmosphere where everybody has a say, even though the opposition is saying that the ruling party that has always denied that, they are not being given the space to breathe, because wherever you turn, they say if it's once it's an accident, second time is a coincidence, the third time it becomes deliberate. So how come all opposition parties are having issues? And the reason why they are pointing to the president and the APC is because when you look at the history of the president and how he ran Lagos, he tactically demobilizes the opposition. So that's why fingers are constantly pointed at him that this is not Lagos for him to run like an empire. Well, they've continued to deny and deny, but his proxies are not helping issues. When Femi Gbajabiamila, for instance, told Mr. Abejide during one of the social events, I think that it was Mr. Abejide's, Honorable Abejide's wife's event, I think birthday or so, as I scattered them, destroyed them, no, not destroy, scattered them. Those are the words he used. People said that even in case you were looking for a confirmation that the APC is responsible for disruption so that they will be the only party on the ballot. That's one of the confirmations. But there has been that back and forth. Bukola, what bothers me is the rhetorics and the recklessness of those rhetorics. It is not new in Nigeria. In the 1965 election that led us to the coup that we experienced in 1967, 65, 66, you remember the whole issue, because when Governor Makinde was speaking, I took my time to listen to his presentation. And he was talking about the fact that they should remember that this is Ibadan, and this is the political headquarters of Southwest Nigeria, and by extension Nigeria. And he referenced that very black spot in Nigeria's history, which is the Operation Wetia, where people went wild because they felt they were cheated by the system. I think it was the NNDP, or the ruling party then. And then that was what caused the problem between Akintola and the sage Awolowo, where it was widespread rigging. What happened then was, it was seen by the opposition as pure impunity, to say we'll get this thing done and rig and nothing will happen. Look at where it landed us. And let's fast forward, 2015, similar thing almost happened when this same All Progressives Congress then. I remember I watched an interview Shehu did with vice presidential candidate then, gentleman, brilliant man, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, who eventually became vice president. And he asked him, some leaders of your party are saying they're going to form a parallel government. I expected him to say, well, that may not be it. That may not be the wise thing to do. But he doubled down. Shaun kept asking him, wouldn't that be inciting? Wouldn't that be anarchy? He said, no, it doesn't work like that. He tried to explain it away that if the ruling party, by whatever means, subvert the will of the people and take the people for granted, the opposition can form a parallel government to put pressure on the government to do the right thing. Now, that was anarchy. Calling for anarchy, that was inciting. But the professor, the distinguished professor, was just being a politician. And that was not responsible for me. It was reckless for the party to have said they'll form a parallel government. Now, we have come here again. Seyi Makinde, the governor of Oyo State, another statement that should be considered reckless as well, invoking Operation Wet here in our policy, because we know how that ends. But I can understand the frustration, but that doesn't mean we should use our words. So we're getting to a very serious political season where politicians may be making very reckless statements. Please, we want to call for caution. Because when it happens, God forbid it happens, they have their kids, their children all over the world. They will be there from whatever group they may form and be forcing to restore democracy and be tweeting, while the people who can't afford that lifestyle or can't afford to run away will be here feeling the impact of the recklessness of rhetorics and politicians speaking, and all of that. We have not even entered the campaign season, Bukola. We have not even started. In fact, we don't even know who the candidate of any political party is, maybe apart from President Bola Tinubu, who has been endorsed. So what I'm saying is that different political dispensation, I've seen different political leaders, including this APC, including now what Seyi Makinde has said, including what happened in 1965, making reckless, irresponsible statements that could, inflame the polity. And I think this is time for us to call for caution. This time for everybody to call for restraint. Yes, you can do your jabs, you can throw mudsling and all of that, but please, it mustn't be violent. And please, that's Kayode, up to you now.
Well, Jeffrey, measuring the political temperature this morning, you're certain that things are getting really heated up. And really, it's not the people that begin the heating up of the polity. It's usually the political actors, because they wield the influence, they wield that power over the people. So whatever they say, the people then take it, multiply it. It's exponential eventually when it hits the streets. But he was building up yesterday when he talked about the 1950 constitutional conference of sorts that gave birth to the Macpherson Constitution, trying to say, well, Ibadan is a very pivotal place when it comes to politics, governance in Nigeria. So if he had stopped there, that would have been a great way to reference Ibadan and show that, well, Ibadan is a powerful and prominent place. So this meeting we're having for opposition, or this opposition summit, it's probably going to reflect the power that Ibadan has, maybe in the coming election 2027. But the moment he pushed it forward and said, well, don't forget that Operation Wetie also started from here. You know that Wetie is a very, very touchy spot, whichever way you look at it, whether he's still trying to refer to the prominence of Ibadan in, still influencing governance in Nigeria, because that's what led to the coup eventually. But the mention of the Wetie naturally just soured the mood for everybody. You could even tell from the atmosphere. Maybe some tried to clap, some were thinking, wait, is it the same Wetie that we're thinking about? So I think him using that, trying to paint a picture of how important the meeting and the place, the venue of that meeting is, naturally was a miscalculation that has now been taken on by the opposition. And I think that, that is what will happen at the time like this. So instead of trying to use examples that will spiral or heat the polity up more than it is already, politicians must watch what they say, right? Because one, it's not just the opposition that will take it up, the people would also take it up. I mean, do you know what that cost the region, Ibadan, the whole Wetie process? It didn't just cost property, it cost lives as well. So as much as Ibadan found a way to change, whether for good or for bad, governance in Nigeria and all of that, Wetie still remains a sour point. So it's important, and it's been said time and again, and we'll have the opposition join us on the program today to speak to that matter. But it's important, a note of caution, whether you are in the APC, the ruling party, or the opposition, it is important to be very measured in the words that are put out there. We're so definitely going to let you hear the Oyo State Governor speaking. But I think it was just a statement that soured that build-up, that point he was trying to make yesterday. But clearly, I think everybody knows that this is a time that we cannot afford. We can't afford anything close to that, talk more of that. So let's be measured, certainly. So as the MBC speaks to, journalists, try to regulate and say, do not heat up the policy and all of that, who's going to put the politicians in check, Jeffrey Mukola? Who?
Very good question, Kayode. And just to be clear, Operation Wet here actually meant setting ablaze politicians and their properties in the 60s on fire with petrol. That's what it meant. And of course, it came amid the battle for supremacy between two political leaders in the Southwest at the time, late Chief Obafemi Awolowo and SL Ladoke Akintola. And, evidently, Nigeria does not need that kind of degeneration into violence amid the political tension that we're already experiencing. Add to that the challenge of insecurity, where lives are lost daily due to attacks in Nigeria's north. And so what we need, especially from politicians, even the opposition, while they try to get their act in order, is engagement of ideas, alternative policy ideas to some of the challenges that we're currently experiencing. If they disagree with the ruling All Progressives Congress and its report of progress in terms of, economic indicators, what are the alternative ideas? We've been calling for, a release of the ADC's manifesto such that we can scrutinize what indeed it has to offer. And so that's what, the political atmosphere should be looking like at the moment. Certainly not a call to violence. But of course, we'll be asking, the party spokesperson later on, what that call to suggestion of call to violence means. A statement has since been issued. We'll get to that statement in a moment. But let's listen to the governor of Oyo State at that opposition party summit in Ibadan.
This is not defined by the success of one party. It is defined by the existence of real alternatives, by the ability of citizens to choose, and by the confidence that those choices matter. Once that disappears, what we have may still be called democracy, but it will no longer function as one. Now, this discussion is happening here in Ibadan. It's not by accident. Ibadan has always served as the political capital of the Southwest and indeed Nigeria. And let me sound a note of warning for those that are carrying on as if there will not be tomorrow. They should remember that Operation Wet here started from here. This is the same wild west. Let me also be clear about what this meeting is not. It is not a gang up against one man. And it is not about individual ambition to be president. It is about the collective ambition of the Nigerian people to have a democracy that is properly defined. This is a gathering about something more fundamental. The survival of a system that allows Nigeria to remain open, competitive, and accountable. Because democracy without opposition is not democracy. It is a slow drift towards a one-party state.
So in case you did not hear, we just had to play it for you. Bukola and Kayode made great points as to the fact that people must be allowed to thrive. They've accused the ruling party over and over. Those ones have denied that they are not responsible for that. It's self-inflicted. There's a way you can put this statement and make a point and say, look, what you guys are doing, we've seen this before, so that it doesn't degenerate to anarchy and you blame anyone for this. But literally punching on that Operation Wet here was, the line that is crossed. Just like I said, the APC crossed that line in 2015 as well. And some other thing that happened is 1965. So politicians, while you're taking turns to cross lines, please, this is not the time. Just help Nigeria. We're already dealing with a loss as a people. We can't add another layer to it. And APC, in case you're responsible for the scattering of the other opposition, but stop scattering them. This is just a enlightenment. Stop scattering the opposition, just in case you're responsible. You've been accused, you've denied. But just in case you are, just stop. And the opposition, for instance, they set trap for you. Stop walking into that trap. Do the right thing. Let the court and all of that decide. What I'm saying in translation is, please, let us maintain the peace. Let the ruling party not be overbearing. Let the opposition not heat up the polity. Let everybody find a space to express themselves. Let Nigerians decide which leader they want. The ones that like Bola Tinubu, they will vote for him to continue. The ones that don't want him, they will kick him out. It's a question of who will do better, and then we'll have an election.
And if we recall that speech again, we'd see that the governor moved away from reading his speech when he was about to make that comment. And then, he spoke to Operation Wete, reminding everyone that Ibadan is the political capital of the Southwest. So is it a resort to, did it come from a place of anger? Did it come from a place of frustration? Because the opposition parties are clearly not happy that the space has not been opened up to competition, healthy competition for everyone. They have constantly accused the ruling All Progressives Congress of using the judiciary and defections, to stifle the voice of opposition. So it appears that it came from a place of frustration and anger. But if that is the case, it can be, channeled more constructively, more positively, to getting the issues, all of the legal issues resolved ahead of time, such that the opposition can compete favorably, in the elections. And we're now seeing that they're coming together. We saw leaders of the ADC and the PDP at that opposition party summit. What does this mean? Does this mean that, the House is one, united, and they're ready to take on the ruling party? If that's what it means, then all of that energy can be channeled positively. Kayode.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely. So I think we're all clear. We can make our points. We can posture, build up to the elections and do it the right way. I think that this should be a challenge to politicians. Can we make this 2027 election one that generations after us will speak about and say, that 2027 election stood out? Because when you heat up the polity, well, you'll get a lot of result. And it just takes us naturally to the event that is, well, the aftermath of the event played out in the U.S. over the weekend, where a man has now been arrested after shots were fired inside the hotel where the White House Correspondents' Dinner was being held on Saturday night. He's been named by law enforcement officials as Cole Thomas Allen. He's a 31-year-old. The suspect is from Torrance in the Los Angeles region of California. So this event happened just at the level below where President Donald Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance were seated for the White House Correspondents' Dinner on Saturday. I know this has raised questions about security service protocols, whether there should be changes to the already tight cordon around the president and at that event. But for a lot of people, they're not surprised. Because, again, you hear all the rhetorics, all the immigration talks, hitting the polity. I mean, there you see the suspect. So this happening is almost like a natural consequence of when the polity is heated up in that sense. But again, they're still investigating the motive behind this. The suspect, according to preliminary findings, said that he wanted to shoot officials in the Trump administration. That's according to sources. I don't know if it's a cautionary note to Jeffrey Bukola, but what do you see here?
Well, President Trump appears to be, one like a cat with 9 lives. Remember, during the presidential election in the country, in Pennsylvania, I believe, he survived an assassination attempt. And in spite of all the legal hurdles in his part, he was able to, surmount them and won the presidential election and became president. And the events that have trailed his presidency have, according to reports also from the United States, caused his ratings to drop, especially with the engagement with the war in Iran alongside Israel. And so it's a very divided country that we see, especially with, leading voices, condemning the war in Iran and saying that this is all Israeli interests, and that United States nationals in the armed forces should not be used to prosecute this war. So there is a lot of anger also in the United States of America. But we know that President Trump is a strong character, and as a matter of fact, he's been speaking in the last 12 hours or so, and he says that he's done a lot for the United States of America. He said he's done a lot to change the country, regardless of the assassination attempt. To quote him copiously, he says, "I ask respectfully, why do you think this keeps happening to you?" A reporter asked, Trump. Well, he answered, "I've studied assassinations, and I must tell you, the most impactful people, the people that do the most, you take a look at Abraham Lincoln, the people that make the biggest impact, they are the ones that they go after." So what do you make of it? You decide. Jeffrey.
Well said. So let's take a break now. When we come back after the break, we'll bring in our guest who is going to help us take a look at what the dailies are reporting. Stay with us. Mr. Akintobi joins us. Mr. Akintobi, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank God it's Monday.
Thank God it's your Monday.
Yes, it is.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Let's get started straight up. This Nigeria is reporting what we commented on at the beginning of the program. APC marking the clash deepens over Ibadan summit. Operation Wet here is a dangerous rhetoric that could incite violence. Is warning against repression, not a threat, or your state camp. So, you see, on one hand, they are saying, he's drawing an analogy to say, look, what you guys are doing, we've been here before, we know it ended. The others are saying that was an irresponsible statement for you to do that analog. And what do you make of it?
Well, at a time of heightened political tension, as we are seeing now in the run-up to the 2027 election, caution should be the watchword. I mean, I don't think the governor had any malicious intent. I don't really think that he was actually inciting or encouraging anybody to use violence as a tool in terms of either promoting their own political aspirations or even trying to neutralize the ruling party's seeming penchant for wanting to repress the opposition. But nonetheless, statements like that can be misconstrued, even if they didn't have any negative intent. It's easy to misconstrue, and so one should be very, very careful at a time like this, especially as a public figure, a politically exposed person whose words carry weight. I mean, there are people right now in the polity who are discouraged, disgruntled, demoralized, depressed, and they're looking for any little thing to latch onto to give a basis for agitation, for violence, for oppositional politics. So our politicians should really be very careful and be intentional about the things that they say. Now, in terms of the meeting in general, I like the idea that a real coalition is being formed. I mean, we've been talking about the ADC as a coalition all along, but it's not really a coalition. What we saw on Saturday is the makings of a coalition where all these parties come together and agree to collaborate on a uniform objective. Down the road, if they now decide to collapse themselves under one umbrella because of things like the Electoral Act that says you can't belong to multiple parties, so there are some legal hurdles that a coalition needs to overcome. But I think they recognize the fact that standing alone, any opposition standing alone likely may not be able to mount a strong enough challenge against the incumbent party, and so that it will take the collective strength of many, the kind of thing where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, and them coming together. Some of the things that I heard there gave me a sense of double standards and hypocrisy. I look at Governor Makinde. What struck me more than the weightier statement was the fact that he was at the vanguard of this movement of trying to unseat the incumbent. But I remember that in 2023 he was part of the G5. So if he's here complaining about the fact that the APC is moving us to a one-party state, how about the role that he played in getting the APC into power? Because he was one of those opposition figures who worked for the ascendancy of President Bola Tinubu, and now all of a sudden, which goes to show this thing, they say that politics is all about interest, really. So now in 2027 his interests have shifted. He's not running for office again, at least not as governor. He might have senatorial ambitions. I hear he might even want to be a vice president. Some say he even wants to run for the presidency, but his interests have clearly shifted. But this is what we talk about, politicians with double speak from both sides of their mouths, that on the one hand in 2023 he participated actively in bringing about this move towards a one-party state by supporting the emergence of then candidate Bola Tinubu to become president, which did succeed. So I really don't think he has the moral authority to be telling anybody right now that the APC is trying to turn the country into a one-party state, is repressing the opposition, without him alluding to the fact that he played a role in that happening.
Oh, yeah. Reminder that there were cracks in the wall from the beginning, maybe even prior to that time. But there was more that happened over the weekend, and Khalid, I believe, has the next one.
Yes, Bukola, the Abuja Inquirer is where we're headed to next, naturally, because I'm right here in Abuja. And, this is a story that is big in the nation's capital, a very sad one. You see, controversy trails death of core member in Abuja. Citizens indict army. He was caught in robbery crossfire. That's from the Guards Brigade. So his friends and family have narrated what transpired. And then we have another statement from the Guards Brigade saying he was caught in robbery crossfire. I mean, you could even see videos of the bullets fired through. And they're asking, how come this young man was in his apartment, according to what we hear? So how was he caught in a crossfire? How did that much bullet go through his apartment and then hit him? And now he's dead. It's a very sad one for Abdul Samad Jamiu, core member in Shagari quarters, Day. So that's what the nation's capital is grappling with right now, just to ensure that there is justice for this young man, the core member. Of course, that story, APC hits Makinde, alleges incitement, destabilization plot. So as you would expect, naturally, the opposition will latch on to it. But, Mr. Kintobi, that's a big story on the front page of the Abuja Inquirer this morning.
Well, It's a heartbreaking incident, and when you think about it, people who go into the youth service corps go to serve our country. They're our best and brightest who have just finished university education. They're at the threshold of the beginning of the rest of their lives, and they put themselves forward to serve the nation at this level and in very harrowing conditions generally. I mean, there's little or no pay. They end up going to go and do a orientation exercise in the wilderness. They have military type paramilitary training that is physically demanding, and then after that they go and work for little or no gratitude for a year to serve the country. So the very minimum we owe them is protection of their lives and their property. When you see something like this happening, especially in a place like Abuja, that is the Federal Capital Territory, that is the seat of government, that is the seat of all of our armed forces and all of our defense apparatus and architecture, you would imagine that Abuja should be the safest place in the country. And then when you find that a youth corper loses his or her life under these kind of circumstances, and there's controversy obviously behind what actually happened. But for me, I feel the pain of parents who labored to educate and train their offspring and are finally free of school fees and university fees, and here's this person about to go out in life and try and make something of him or herself, and then this kind of thing happens. It speaks to the insecurity in the nation that we can't protect our own. When we're unable to protect our brigadier generals, the leaders of the insecurity, then it will devolve to the rest of the society, and we can begin to see that even our youth are not safe, and it gets quite worrisome when something like this happens. And I would say and hope that investigation unravels what actually happened, and that whoever's responsible is brought to book. This notion of getting justice for people, to me, is a bit of an unsatisfactory concept, because getting justice for somebody doesn't restore a life. It's medicine after death as far as I'm concerned. And what I would prefer to see is prevention of this kind of thing happening in the first place, rather than us now trying to get retribution that doesn't restore a life. So, I think it's a blight on all of us, and my heart goes out to the family of the deceased, and we pray that that God will grant them the fortitude to bear the loss. But at the same time, I think the nation owes a debt of regret, a debt of apology, and the fact that they were on that person was on national duty is what makes it all the more heart-rending, and why we as a people and the government as an institution has a role to play in ensuring that this kind of thing doesn't happen again to our youth.
Rather sad one, and that's yet another death recorded over the weekend. I was reading, that an influencer was reacting to the death of one Madonna University student who was attacked for being peculiar in a way, and he really expressed his anger about that particular the death of that particular student. Contrary reports are emerging from the institution as to what caused the death of the student, but whatever the case, the sense of insecurity, the weight of insecurity in the land is really there, and it shouldn't be anger should not extend to institutions. And of course, as much as possible, the government must take responsibility for securing the roads, the highways, such that people can go about their businesses peacefully, even in communities. And another interesting story on the front page of the Abuja Inquirer, are two that border on education. Viral 394 UTME result of Cross River candidate fake. That's ascribed to JAM, is a page 10 read. And there's this interesting one. FCTA pays 20,000 naira to 15,000 students each as scholarship. It's a page 7 read. Mr. Akitobi, perhaps you want to speak to those two stories before we get to the next one.
In my days, when we were trying to go to university in this country in the 70s, there used to be something called a bursary award that the state governments used to actually give each of their students, even if you are going to university outside your state. Once you were in tertiary education, whatever state you were from gave you a bursary award, which is equivalent to the scholarship you're talking about. And it was given every year that you were in school. And it more or less assisted even your tuition, your board, your lodging, whatever the case may be. The amount varied from state to state. But no matter your financial circumstances, whether your parents were rich or poor, whether you could afford school fees or not, whether you needed the money or not, as long as you are an indigene of a particular state and you applied for this bursary, you would get it. The difference between that and NEL Fund is that it was a grant. It was dash. They gave you. There was no notion of you having to pay back after you've completed school, and it really boosted the morale of students. It was something to always look forward to. You remember that when you're expecting the award, there'd be excitement in the air because we don't have money in our pockets. And in those days, I think the meal ticket was like 4 kobo. I don't think the youth of today even know what a kobo is, but
I doubt that Jeffrey knows.
in those days 100 kobo made 1 naira. 100 kobo made 1 naira. So, I mean, you are eating lunch for maybe 40 kobo or something like that, and you'd get a bursary award that was several thousand naira, rich. And it actually helped so much with education. Your parents would send you to school, they probably pay your fees. They may not be able to give you any pocket money, or they probably wouldn't bother to give you any pocket money because they knew the state would step in and give you that money. So, Nigeria was good in those days. In those days, those were the real dividends of democracy. Everybody, the government not only took care of security, not only took care of foreign policy, not only took care of, law enforcement, protection of life and property, but they also looked after the welfare of each and every individual from cradle to grave. We got social welfare in different forms, whether it was in the general hospitals, which were top-notch and world-class establishments. You got pretty much almost free treatment. You would pay according to the first thing they'd ask you is, what does your father do? How much does he earn? If your father is a vulcanizer or a bricklayer, you get that, and the income is low. You paid almost next to nothing. So those were the days when Nigeria really, we were patriotic then because the country loved us and showed it loved us. So we loved the country back in return. But today it's every man for himself, God for us all, So everybody has to make their own way. We feel very little government impact in our daily life. So I'm glad to see that the FCT
20,000 naira.
Well, it's the thought that counts. Yes, 20,000 naira might not go very far, but to a struggling student, it'll feed him for a few days, So, but more than the actual impact is the symbolism for me. The fact that the government cares enough to want to give something. I think that's important.
Maybe we'll take a quick look at the Vanguard. Since we're talking education, just in 1 minute if you can. NASU, Konwa, NAPTEN, all this association to federal government.
Yes.
You can't scrap irrelevant courses in universities. So the writer says, warns students against taking loans to pursue worthless courses. I don't know what, I've never heard it before. Courses that let courses evolve, Konwa. Relevant, irrelevant courses can't be determined on face value, and there's on and on. So it's like to me, which courses are useless?
Well, at one point they removed history from the curriculum because they thought it was a useless course.
Oh boy.
And then we saw what happened, because those who don't know their history are condemned to make the errors of the past. So who determines what is a worthless course? And when you look at the way the world is evolving, what was relevant yesterday is obsolete today. I mean, look at things like medicine now, where you've got telemedicine, you've got robots that are doing operations on human beings. So all of a sudden, the medical field is changing so rapidly that even certain courses in the medical field have become obsolete. So I think the body of human knowledge is so vast that we shouldn't necessarily undermine any field of study, no matter how trivial it looks. And to answer Bukola's second question quickly about this UTME3, they said it's fake, it's fraud. How did that kind of thing come out in terms of the portal? JAM portal is the only place where you should be able to get a result and confirm it. So it goes to show that this notion of this digital era, this digital world that we live in now, is susceptible, is very vulnerable, susceptible to compromise. Otherwise, how do you begin to get UTME results out that are fake? So that's it for education this morning.
Yeah, that's a page 9 read. I wish we had time, would have spoken to page 21, but we don't have time, where Nigerian Guild of Editors set up sue NBC over gag order. You know that controversy?
Yes.
NBC, we're still open to you coming on the program, by the way. Mr. Dayakintobi, thank you so much for coming on the program. We appreciate it, as always. Journalists and public affairs analysts, thank God it's Monday.
Thank God it's Monday. Good morning, Nigeria. Happy Monday, happy great week to you.
All right, so we did invite the NBC when they released that statement to come and explain to us what bullying and intimidation is. Well, we haven't gotten a response from them. We hope we can get a response. Now they are going to be explaining all of that perhaps in court. I hope they show up in court this time, because one of the things that had made them perhaps lose the other case was they didn't show up, according to what I read. But let's tell you what we're playing out today. First, we're going to talk security, and then we're going to talk politics, and then we'll talk about the state of Nigerians in South Africa with the xenophobic attack. Stay with us.
Well, let's start off with a very, very important topic. And we saw the General Court-Martial begin on Friday of serving officers who were investigated from about, mid-2025 for allegedly plotting a coup to unseat a democratically elected president, of course, the government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. We've seen a series of events after that. The spouses of these widows come out to ask that they be charged or they be, granted pardon. We saw that, play out about a month ago, following the intervention of civil rights activist Omoyele Sowore. Now that the General Court-Martial has begun and they are set to be arraigned and taking their plea, what does this mean for, subsequent events, especially in the military and, of course, in a democratically elected government? It's a very important conversation to have. What can we draw, from what will possibly happen, in the light of past events in the military where coups had taken place and then there was a court-martial? And joining us on the show this morning to weigh in on the conversation is former defense spokesperson Major General Chris Olukolade, retired, and former Director of Defense Information. General Olukolade, good morning, sir, and welcome to the Morning Brief.
Good morning, Paula. How are you?
Very well, thank you, sir. It's good to see you. I already set the tone, but maybe I should just, go back on it a bit. From what we had seen in the past for military court-martials of those alleged to have plotted a coup against a sitting government, what can we expect from this general court-martial? Well, we hope to get General Olukolade back as soon as possible to continue this conversation, but it's very important to see these matters from the perspective of the military. All right, Major Olukolade, I'm told you're back now. Yeah, it's good to know that you're back now, and the connection we hope will, go through seamlessly such that we can have a constructive conversation. So what do we expect from this court-martial against the backdrop of similar events in the past?
All right. I didn't get anything from you. But,
okay, can you hear me now? Let me just find out if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
What?
Can you hear me?
I hear you now. Go ahead.
All right. So I asked, what can we expect from this general court-martial of these military officers that have been investigated for allegedly plotting a coup and have now been charged? What can we expect from the trial?
Well, from the approach at conducting this trial, you see that the military has been so methodical to follow the processes that this took. general court martial, and after doing investigation, I think the court stage is set. That what we hear from the defense record, and the assurance that the proceedings will be fair, impartial, and strict in accordance with due processes. We believe that due justice is served, and it is to assure this that they are taking the very measured steps that have been taken so far in coming this far to the point that the trial starts. And with the assurances we have, I think if you have justice really served to conform with the military's position in dealing with issues such as this and ensuring the proper civil military relations idea of the system. We should expect due justice in line with the best practices perhaps all over the world in military court.
So in securing justice for both parties, the serving of the officers charged and the government, rights activist, human rights activist Mr. Femi Falana has kicked against the General Court Martial, saying that a military trial for suspects charged in the army is unconstitutional in a democratic government. How do you react to this, sir?
Well, first of all, we must realize that military court martial and the military justice system is universally recognized for those who are under military service or the military system. And so in this case, it's not activated. Besides, the content and the approaches to civil and to the court martial have been covered really by textbook laws of the situation as really enacted by the National Assembly. So these laws are not as isolated as presented. They are really recognized even constitutionally by the fact that it is really endorsed acts of situation. Like I said, really enacted by the National Assembly. So with that, I think those criticizing the process should know that it is not as isolated as presented. And it's a proper law of the situation. And like I said, it's universal, it's not just in Nigeria, and provided it conforms with the law of any federation where it is applied, it is fully accepted. I think we should go by this process without some obstruction.
Broader picture, and maybe we'll step away from the proceedings for a moment and look at a broader picture. Just over the weekend, we're still seeing what played out in Mali, right? The defense minister killed. It's been described as a coup attempt in that sense. So government being attacked there in Mali. In the US, we had that conversation when we started the program about a shooter who said he wanted to kill or shoot officials in the Trump government. The president and vice president were just on the level above him. He almost got through security before he was apprehended. So we've seen, attacks on government now in Mali, in the United States. And I wonder for you, if you look at those cases, isolated definitely, but the one in Mali is being linked, the Sahel region is being linked naturally to Nigeria. So I want to just get your thoughts on those isolated events, and if we're seeing an increasing, incidents of this, and is it something to be worried about?
Well, perhaps in conformity with the trends in terrorism globally, and as in the case of Mali, you know that the Sahel region itself has been under that degree of pressure and attention from terrorists all over the place. Now, if we relate that to the United States issue, you see that that's related and not connected as related to Mali. What I think is common to both of them is the fact that these are terrorist activities, and it should be seen as well. And it also shows the level of preparedness of the state to handle such anomalies. The Niger situation, the Italian situation, I, I really can understand how it's connected. Yeah, and know how to prevent similar happening around us. That's perhaps the lessons we learn from this. And I think that the citizens.
Okay, we lost you for a moment there, General. I was really hoping that the connection will not act up at this time, but I mean, the situation in Mali with the terrorists, the minister killed, you've described that as terrorism, and even the one in the U.S., but you've also talked about the response that we've seen from, well, both countries. You've seen the response from the U.S., you've seen, well, how Mali has responded as well, and I know you're talking about lessons, so let's come back to Nigeria. And, you know, there is the attempted coup, the allegations around that. And there is also perhaps an underlying issue, which I don't know if you're looking at that beyond just the surface, the outcome and dealing with this. Do you see the underlying issues that have predisposed Nigeria to this? Some have described it as discontent with government. Some have also described it as some sort of discontent within the military itself, that all is not well within the Nigerian military. So beyond the court-martial, the proceedings, which is important, what about the underlying issues? Do you think we're also dealing with that, General?
Honestly, I didn't get the details of your question.
General, but I'm going to hand over now to Bukola and Jeffrey.
Oh, well, there's so many other, angles to this conversation, looking at, what is emerging from court documents, stating, how relations between military officials and politicians can also set the stage for some of the things that we're seeing play out in an alleged military coup. But evidently the network is not encouraging a constructive conversation today, this morning. So we're going to have to end this one here. And thank you very much, sir, for coming through on this one. If you can hear me, we've been talking with Major General Chris Olukolade, former defense spokesperson during the era of former President Goodluck Jonathan. Major General Chris Olukolade, thank you for coming on the program. We'll take a moment now. All right. Evidently, we're moving on with our next conversation, and Jeffrey has got this one.
Yeah, just before we get to that, it's a political conversation. I love to talk politics. But what the Leonard Silk was trying to say in that his write-up, he was citing sections, I think 174, that gives the power to the Constitution gives power to the Attorney General of the Federation to be able to take over a case at any point in time, criminal cases and all of that. Then he referenced Section 251, I think, where the issues around treason and treasonable felony, all of those kind of issues, the Federal High Court has jurisdiction. So you can see Nnamdi Kanu was tried there. I don't know whether he has appealed that case. But it becomes a bit tricky if it's issues, because coup is treasonable. And when it involves military officers, as alleged, military officers have been alleged to participate in this particular coup that was not successful. What then happened? Is it that a court-martial would take place, and then they will now bring it to a civil court, or what exactly? So the lawyers, the senior lawyers, will be able to help us understand what happened. Because when it was in the military era, it is clear as crystal. They have their court-martial and all of that. But when it's in the civilian era, should we still be having general court-martial rather than bringing them to a federal high court to be tried, perhaps all the way to the Supreme Court? Because you also have to give them the benefit of doubt They are not guilty until proven so by a court of competent jurisdiction. So that's what the Lioness Sake was.
Yeah, and you know,
trying to
Jeffrey,
pursue.
the Armed Forces Act itself also makes provision for how this can be, you know, approached if a coup occurs, you know, and officers want to overthrow a government and they are investigated and found to be guilty. I believe there's a portion of the Armed Forces Act that provides for court-martial and the subsequent punitive actions. But the Armed Forces Act is itself a creation of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And so does the Constitution, 1999 as amended, does it take precedence over the Armed Forces Act? So I believe that's an argument that should also be put forward.
So the Constitution takes preeminence over any act. So there are layers to the law. That's why it's called the ground norm. That is a final. Anything that Constitution did not say, didn't say. So the Constitution is the highest law in the land.
So will the Chief Prosecutor General of the Federation
so the Constitution is the highest law in the land, followed by what they call Acts of Parliament. All of these are tax laws, all of this creation, because the Constitution will give you power to be able to create those laws, the National Assembly. And then there are subsidiary laws like executive order, INEC guideline, they call them inferior. There are different names, they call it delegated legislation, all kinds of names. So the Constitution is number one, Act of Parliament is next, and then every other thing follows. So this is best for lawyers to be able to define and explain exactly what it means but Mr. Femi Falana, what he has done is what he should do, calling the attention of the Attorney General, say, please take a look at the books. The Attorney General, look at the books. You can terminate this case, you can take over this case, or you have such powers, because according to Section 251, treasonable felony and felony things that relate to coup like this, is the jurisdiction should be the Federal High Court, not a court-martial in a democracy. But I think we're ready for our next conversation. Kairi, you have this one.
All right. Thank you, Jeffrey. Well, yes, we are talking politics now. The weekend saw the Ibadan declaration. Looks like just before elections we have declarations. The last time we had the Abeokuta declaration, in some sense, by the president. But this is quite different because it's a coming together of opposition parties to make a declaration on how they will be approaching the 2027 election. And we're joined on the program by the National Publicity Secretary of the People's Democratic Party, Mr. Ini Ememwong, right here in our Abuja studio. Good morning, Mr. Ememwong.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Good to have you, and welcome.
You look good, man.
Thank you. I'll take that. You just came back from Ibadan, Southwest, but it's now been described as a wild, wild west. Is that what it is?
No, that's not what it is. In fact, I think everyone should commend Governor Seyi Makinde for reminding us of the circumstances and the consequences. You know, there's usually the argument of cause-effect relationship, the causal factors of what led to the wild, wild west, and the resultant effect of that. And therefore, what is the essence of history if it doesn't teach? What's the essence of history if people don't use it to guide themselves and guard themselves? Because those who neglect history are doomed by it. And therefore, what he did was a reminder, a conscious reminder, that we are gathering here in this city. And incidentally, in this city in 1965, actions that look like what the federal government is. And remember, in his speech, he said, those who are acting as if there is no tomorrow should remember. And so when you begin to analyze the action of the APC-led federal government, you know, today, and the actions of the central government of that time, both in intent and outcome, you find similarity. In fact, you find more gravity today. In fact, if the government at the central government then had done half of what the APC is doing, it would have been wild, wild Nigeria. It wouldn't have been wild, wild West alone. It would have been wild, wild Nigeria. So for me, it's not the reenactment of wait, you know. It is the reminder that things like this, a cautionary sign. That's why you have guardrails on bridges. That's why you have caution signs. They say speed bumps ahead.
But it sounded like a threat. Like, see, we also have something that we can bring to bear if, well, we see that this thing is not favoring us. And the invoking of, remember that Operation Wetia started from here. By the way, there's the angle of Now politicians painting a target on their backs because Wete was essentially targeting politicians on one hand. But the point of invoking that and saying, remember that happened from here, is this election a do or die?
No, election is it's not even about the election, it's about Nigeria. It's about the survival of Nigeria. And if you remember that it was from Wete, it was a precursor to the death of the First Republic. And we are getting to, there's a book that's written by John Campbell, Nigeria Dancing on a Brink, where a lot of these issues, and that was way back, during the Obasanjo transition, the first transition, 2007, civilian to civilian transition. So was that a threat? The gentleman who isn't even a Nigerian was simply saying, Nigerians have been so used to dancing on the brink that they forget that they are so close to the boundaries and that if they tip, that the way down is so far. Was that a threat? No. The use of history must be used to guide. It must be used to teach. That is why it is useful. And so what history does, and so whoever uses history to remind the totality of us, we must thank that person. It wasn't a threat. It's just like, in fact, the way you're asking the question, it is only a subjective mind and the mind of an aggressor. And again, the people who are making the comments, especially the APC, lack any moral fiber to make for a party whose governor threatened an entire opposition and threatened that they cannot guarantee the safety of a Peter Obi in Edo State. And that party could not at least caution that governor. And Peter Obi now went to Edo State and something happened and nothing happened. So what are you saying? So for a party that promised a parallel government in 2013, 2014, for a party that promised to make Nigeria ungovernable and the baboon and blood narrative, so it is using, this is not a threat. It is simply recollecting history to say, dear friends, we are gathered here. And remember that it was the action of politicians, that led to this. As we are gathered here, we are issuing, if you check all of those 8 resolutions, apart from the 9th, which is commending Governor Makinde, the delegates at that summit took all of those resolutions in a bid to prevent the reoccurrence of what happened in 1965. So it wasn't a threat. It wasn't intended to be a threat. It didn't come through as a threat except to those who know what they are doing. So who is threatening democracy more today? People who are creating an asphyxiation of the opposition, people who are making an incursion into opposition strongholds, the same thing that happened there. People who are sponsoring and creating state-engineered factions in political parties, just exactly like what happening in the other time. People who, remember, even now there was also a carryover in the Second Republic where you found elections that were not credible being done in states that the National Party was making an incursion into the heartbeats of the action group, and that led to the collapse into UPN, and that led to the collapse of the Second Republic. Who is threatening democracy?
We can go on and on about this. And I say for politicians, it's numbers. If you had a chance to, you would also get members of the APC to be part of the coalition, or be part of the opposition, wouldn't you? Isn't that something that politicians naturally do?
It is not the what, it is the how and why.
But isn't that something you would?
No, remember there are critical elements to an issue. Why are we doing this? What are we doing? How are we doing? When are we doing? Those are critical questions. So for example, you invited me. This interview won't last forever, so that's the issue of time. When? Why are you asking me? You're asking me because you need clarification. You're not bringing me here for an attack. You're asking because as a participant, you believe that I heard firsthand, in case there were contextual issues that were not covered by the press. That's why you're bringing me. So the why matters, the how matters. And when I came in, we sat down, you didn't back at me. So how you do it matters. So the fact that an interview has happened is the what. How you are doing it is the how. And so what the question is not whether people are moving from one party to the other. No, that's not the question. The question is, how are people moving? Is a president who has the capacity to declare state of emergency in a state, is he actively, like the Plateau State governor said, that he was personally invited? And that invitation, when you look at it contextually, would mean someone to the APC. So can you see that it took the president going to Adamawa for a governor to leave? And you hear these stories. when you recall the fact that a serving minister will get on TV and say, I will put fire in your state, and fire enters the state, political fire enters the state, political crisis enters the state, and the state security, state apparatus, and government do absolutely nothing. So you think that governors who are afraid will just sit down? Nobody wants a state of emergency declared in his state, because when it happened in Rivers, nothing happened. In fact, they had a judicial stand thereafter.
Right.
And so you must understand this context and say that we are not quarreling with who is living and who is not. We are quarreling with the how and the why that these things are happening. There are crude tactics that are being deployed in ways and manner that threaten the game. You see, there is no harm. That is why well, in a football match, you see that the referee is there to regulate. Incidentally, in this case, even the referee is wearing the jersey.
And I said that's one of the resolutions on that declaration. But let's go to our Lagos studio. There's still a lot to unwrap and unpack from this. Jeffrey Bukola.
Yeah, Mr. Memobong, of course, as a politician, you guys will always defend your side, but we must not double down or descend into anarchy. I think that's the central theme here. When we started the program, I kind of reeled through from 1965 to 2015 to some of the things you cited on how politicians, permit my words, have taken turns to be reckless. And at the end of the day, it is the people that will bear the brunt if things go south. He made a good point. Perhaps the sour point was what he made in terms of Operation Wedge here, but you've come to defend it. Well, it's your party, but we must sound that note of caution that it is the people that will bear the brunt if anything goes wrong, whether it's orchestrated by the PDP or the APC, whichever party, or the ADC. But since my colleague has taken you on that particular question, the next is, my question borders on, is the opposition in this time, the coalition, are they aware of the timing that is necessary for them to be able to put their acts together? We just have, today is what, 26th or 27th? I think the party just has maybe till May the 10th or so to be able to put its acts together, whatever that act is. So when the party came to say, we will have one presidential candidate from the opposition, what does it really mean?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff, and good morning to you. Truth is that when like I said, the rule of history is either a reminder of a good past or a bad past. And like Barack Obama said, that in every generation there is a defining moment. In this Fourth Republic, this seems to be the defining moment for the Fourth Republic. And at the defining moment, people either confirm or confront their history. So they confirm the positive side of their history and they confront the negative part of their history. And it was necessary at this time because never in a democratic dispensation within the democratic cycles within this Fourth Republic has democracy, multi-party democracy, been challenged the way it is. And therefore there was need to draw back on a negative history to place it as a constant reminder that we may never go there. Remember that in scripture, when the Israelites went through a lot of journey, they erected a stone of remembrance. That when they got to that point, they would remember that thus far the Lord led us. And therefore, what Makinde did, and in the way we understand and perceive it, apart from those who have any other thing to fear, is a remembrance of a negative history that we may never get there again. And therefore, so should we quarrel about the effects and not worry about the cause? So, coming to the issue of the pressure of time, the opposition leaders are clearly conscious, aware of the pressures of time, and which is why one of the demands is an elongation of time. But whether that happens or not, we have a framework of the actualization of the demands of the Ibadan Declaration. The activation of that, the process of the activation of that, of course, is the working of the back room. But what I can assure you is that we are determined within the ambit of the law to ensure that a one-party system is not foisted on this country and that there will be credible alternatives. So no matter what timeline is given, truth is, we are getting set, we are ready, and the end will justify the means.
So I was asking about when the resolution was that there will be one candidate. So now we have, this is the first time we're having your group, the Turaki group, of the PDP, we have the ADC, we have other people, coming together. So I wanted to be clear, maybe Nigerians would like to know, Is it that how will this work in terms of modalities to get one person to be the opposition figure presidential candidate? Just walk us through what that means.
Okay, so let me walk you through, which is why the resolution is that we have agreed to work to the production of a single presidential candidate, because all of us have agreed that going solo, it would be very difficult to defeat the common adversary, in this sense the APC. And so what we have agreed is to, and that has started immediately after Ibadan, meetings are beginning to get underway to see how to smoothen the issues, because within this amalgamation are issues, some differences within the subsets, because this is now an accumulation. It's like that maths, the mathematics of sets. So you have subsets with defined boundaries within a larger set. So what is being discussed now as we speak is how to blur the lines of boundaries within the subsets, so that within the context of presidential elections, we can have a whole without the presence of subsets. And I mean, that is political engineering, which is ongoing. So I can assure you that as things progress, we'll put you to speed, up to speed about the path that should go out, because we've also discovered that immediately you take a step, you find counter steps being taken, and so there has to be a lot of strategic maneuvers, you know, so you speak less, you allow things to happen before you announce it. So, but I can assure you that the agreement coming out of Ibadan is that, gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen, we have come to a point where we are facing existential crisis, not just for opposition political parties, but for democracy itself. So in the interest and in the interest of saving democracy and for the benefit of having a multi-party democratic system for the benefit of the people, what we have agreed is to create a framework that we can work towards the production of a single presidential candidate, so that all the parties can come together and we can now confront the APC. How that happens, which platform that, I mean, we've thought of to the point where if they take both the ADC and PDP and other, which is why other parties came together, which is that neutral platform that they don't expect that we are going to go to and make sure that we give them a battle. Anyway, in fact, even if they take these elections to the dream, we'll follow them there and we'll make sure that we win them in their election. And so those are the technicalities of how to arrive at that is better done at the background. But I can assure you that the pressure of time is in the consciousness of the leadership.
And so I'm wondering if this means that, you know, from a few days from now, we'll be seeing a merger of PDP and ADC. I know that you're shying away from confirming that, but you also said moments ago that whether or not that happens, that there will be an activation of the back room, which was one of the key outcomes of the Ibadan Convention. What does that mean?
So what that means is that there is plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. And the whole essence of what we met in Ibadan is to say, gentlemen, previously we have had disagreements, but we are faced with the extinction of alternatives. And monopoly has not been good for any society, whether in terms of market, whether in terms of services, whether in terms of, even in terms of friendship, you know, so it's not good. So we must provide alternatives. And having agreed to do that, we are now streamlining the framework and creating a framework that can deliver that option for us. So there will be option A, there will be option B. And I must state that we must even thank the APC because it took their constriction of the political space to get Ibadan to happen. If all the parties had no problems, Ibadan wouldn't happen. If Labour Party had no crisis, PDP had no crisis, ADC had no crisis, all other parties had no crisis, and people did not see through that the process was being engineered to create a one-party state, I'm sure that Ibadan would not have happened. So the APC must understand that Ibadan is a direct response to the activities. So I can tell you that the period of merger is over, like Jeff said. We don't have that timeline for merger, but whatever understand, this is political engineering. And incidentally, the day we met in Ibadan was the same day the biggest civil engineering feat occurred in history, where a seaway was made to link the Great Lakes and the Atlantic. So we also, not just historic, we weren't referring to history alone negatively, we're also referring to history, positively. So I can tell you that the biggest political engineering experience of this Fourth Republic is about to be birthed.
So are we going to also be seeing a presentation of candidates at the other levels under one umbrella, i.e. Senate, House of Reps, governorship from either the PDP or the ADC? Would it be under one umbrella? And how does the party or parties involved now intend to pull that off?
Well, I think you really want to be a part of that inner meeting because these are the things that will be discussed. These are things that are being considered. Because yes, it could be a pyramid structure. It could be a pool structure where you say, okay, if we're doing a pool structure, we pull everyone together and we run that pool structure. It could be a pyramid structure where we agree at the top, but begin to slightly disagree at the base so that the triangle can sit properly. But what we do not want is a rectangular structure where you have too many heads, because it will simply give a slight advantage to the other side.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, we want a viable opposition. So I can see the tactical maneuver you're talking about, because some people have said as soon as you move somewhere, there's going to be another faction. But let's hear the politics. For me, I'm waiting for May 30th when we're going to be clear. Now, let's talk about the timeline and one thing that is important. And you may not give us the full picture, but you may give us what you think as an idea. One of the reasons that the APC was able to form government in 2015 was because they answered a very simple yet critical question. And that question is not who is most qualified, who can win the votes. They were able to look amongst themselves. They had, all kinds of, great people that were qualified to be president. But they summarized and said, it's not about being qualified or not being qualified. At the end of the day, who is the person that can win the vote? We have been seeing, now the PDP has joined this, is it coalition now or opposition coalition? Well, but with the ADC, we're seeing, I won't call it fragmentation, like hardliners, pairings happening. Are you guys asking that critical question about who can win the vote, not who is most qualified? Because if you miss it, the chances are slim.
Yeah, ultimately, the move will be narrowed to answer that question. Because, and that question, which is why if you listen to the speech by Tanimu Turaki SAN, he said we must begin to take data-driven decisions. Decisions not emotionally, decisions not regionally, decisions not based on religion, but decisions anchored on data. And so that is how the discussions in the room were shaped. And out of Ibadan, those analyses are beginning to come through to say, how do these candidates stand individually? How do they stand within the framework of the opposition? Because if people win elections, so for example, in 2015, there were people who could not have, the Buhari tsunami swept a lot of people into the National Assembly. So if you use the fact that someone had won elections in 2015 through that tsunami to judge, then you'll be wrong. So contextual analysis, nuanced analysis is ongoing at the moment. And across the board, the PDP is not joining the coalition. What we have now is an opposition, a broader opposition understanding, where other parties, the ADC, the PDP, and all other parties, look at what the chairman of the Democratic Leadership Alliance did. He came through and said, look, we're a party of young people. We started this and we brought this, and for the sake of democracy, we are bringing our platform to say, you can use this platform to run. It has no problem. And there are many other parties like that who are saying to us, look, if they take PDP, they take the ADC, please, we offer you this platform. So that's going to be the result must come from the question, must be an answer to the question, using data, using contemporary analysis, who can win the votes? because that's the whole essence. So I can assure you that the analysis will come to that.
John, you said the end justifies the means, and I want you to help Nigerians envisage there's your end, which is to win. We know that that is quite clear. But is the end for Nigerians, which is what will make them either connect to these means that you're putting up, or disconnect and say, you know, let's plug our back into the APC and not the coalition. What is the end like? Because consistently the APC has asked questions like, does the coalition or whoever is representing the opposition, do you plan to remove subsidy or take it back or continue what we're doing? Do you plan to return us to the exchange rate which we had before and not the current one that we have? What exactly do you plan to do differently that the APC is not doing, particularly those major policies? And I'm not sure I've really gotten a clear answer to that.
Okay, so for us, the end is not for us to win. That's not the end. The end is to ensure that the people decide who wins.
And you want it to be you.
That's what we want.
But you want
no.
To be the
If
winner.
the people truly decide that it's not us, we're fine. I mean, you must come to a democracy with that conscience.
So you're fine if the people say it's
absolutely. But what we are saying is, let's give a level playing field where these people determine. Let's not use the Electoral Act to predetermine that there won't be network where there is network. Let's not use the Electoral Act to create legality for non-serialized ballot papers. Let's not use the Electoral Act to stifle democracy. Let's not use the institutions of states to prevent the people from determining. Our determination is that let the people decide who wins. Whoever, because I mean at the end it's the people who would enjoy or suffer. So let the people themselves, without determine that outcome. We don't want to win willy-nilly. We don't want to win a rigged elections. We don't want to win an election and lose Nigeria. We want an election where Nigerians determine. That way, you don't win an election, you win Nigeria. This government that concentrated on winning the election has been battling more than 3 years thereafter to win Nigerians.
So, are you going to crawl back on those policy decisions, return subsidy, return the exchange rate back to what it was before, and some of the other policies of this government, specifically now?
Now, clearly, why that conversation is yet to emerge is the fact that people are battling for their lives. You see, when you have fire in this room, you won't remember the backpack that you brought. You want to run out first. We have political fire, like Igini said. The economy, peace and security is linked to politics. The political emergence, the leadership recruitment processes in politics would determine, because your credibility to speak to the people, your credibility to think for them and think with them will come from the processes that you emerge from. And therefore, when you're taking decisions, you'll be determining, if you emerge from the people, you know that they are your number one stakeholder group, not financial houses in France, not foreign Nigerian-based entrepreneurs. You're thinking Nigeria first because you emerge through a Nigeria first process. But if you emerge through an elite consensus, your number one stakeholder when you are trying to retain power will be to service the elites,
So
like you're finding here. So what we are saying is that the arguments, the research, the propositions, the alternative propositions are on ground. But if you finish discussing this proposition and you have no platform to stand, today we are talking about, like Napoleon Bonaparte said, give me but one firm spot to stand and I'll move the world. And we are simply saying, can Nigerians join us, like they are doing now, to loosen the chokehold on opposition parties so that we cannot... Someone is pressing my throat and you're saying I should propose to a lady. I want to leave first before I see the lady.
So for you, that is not on the table yet. You're trying to survive.
Those are on the table. But the discourse of the moment is the political survival of this democracy. Is the survival of competitive democracy. It is the... So if we begin to have all of those fine discussions, and at the end of the day, you have absolutely no platform, I will just have entertained you. And so these discussions are there. So for example, if you come to the issue of subsidy, this president in 2012 led a struggle against subsidy. And so he owes Nigerians an apology to say that, oh, what's the difference between removing subsidy then and removing it now? I believe as a person that every nation has a part of its national life that is subsidized. And while the issues of subsidy were not about whether it was getting to the common Nigerians, no, it was about the fraud that happened there and the loopholes that were there. And now the issue as of 2023 was not whether or not subsidy ought to have been removed, was how it was removed. That a gentleman who hadn't entered office yet stood outside and made an announcement, and that day, the price of fuel, the unit price of fuel went up more than 400%. That is what we are talking about. So the reckless disposition and the simplistic disposition to very complex issues.
Right.
So the issue is this. So what were the buffers kept before? You are now doing a post-removal buffer, which till today, you can see that it hasn't had sufficient effect. Well, so if people earn 70,000 and you cannot fill your tank at a time, you know, with less than that amount of money,
right,
if you run a 100-liter tank capacity. So the question is, did we think through this process? And so now the opposition will present a robust alternative policy to all of this. And it will be written. Remember that we can't piggyback to 2023 because a lot has happened between them.
So you just basically continue with the current.
No. We are taking the research as of today and saying, how do we better the bad that has been done? That is where we are today.
Okay.
Because you can't go back to pre. Because if you go back to that to say that, oh, fuel will be 200 naira, what happens to the 1,300 we are buying today? So the strategic approach, which our joint teams have worked on, and that will come immediately we have a platform to negotiate this.
Mr. Namobong, the journey ahead is still quite eventful. There's still the courts that you're waiting on, whether it's for the PDP or the ADC or some of the other parties that have come together. So I'm sure you're also praying, aside the whole legal process, that we hope that this goes in our favor. Because if it doesn't, if it collapses the PDP or the ADC, what happens?
That's why we have Plan B. We have Plan C. We have Plan D.
It's Seriake Dixon's party.
No, we have a lot of plans.
Or Labour Party.
So much on the table. But you know, maneuvering before, and you should also be praying. You know why? A one-party state will not help the press. Will not help the judiciary.
I pray.
Will not help anybody.
I pray every day. Certainly, you people are not on my prayer point. Nigeria is on my prayer point. But we wish you the very best.
And our survival is Nigeria's survival.
Absolutely. If at least you mean well for the people, as you say. But Mr. Ini Ememobong, we have to thank you for your time, National Publicity Secretary.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Let's bring in this conversation that is a bad spot and black spot, if you will, on the conscience of Africa, xenophobia in South Africa. South Africa is a beautiful country. Some of us have had the privilege to go there. It's a beautiful place to be. But what we see is very disturbing. And this is not the first time. It looks like time and again it keeps happening. And the role that a lot of African countries played to bring an appetite to an end looks like some young persons may not even be aware or may have been misguided by perhaps mischievous political element. I was just watching a video not too long ago where late Winnie Mandela was thanking Nigeria for the role it played. I know that Thabo Mbeki at some point schooled in Nigeria. There were people, I heard someone now maybe in his 50s or 60s saying that time in the 80s and 70s, 80s, he was willing to travel down to South Africa to join the ANC to fight against apartheid. That's how much Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Zambia, and the rest of the continent aggregated to support this oppression that was very deadly for the black people of South Africa. Now they've gotten it, and now the country, we're seeing all kinds of elements taking on all kinds of causes, including chasing Africans or trying to chase Africans out of their own country. So I want to bring in our guest. Tokpa Ajayi is the acting Nigerian ambassador to South Africa. Mr. Ajayi, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Mr. Ajayi, I think the great place to start, I guess maybe you are in Gauteng, maybe you're in Johannesburg or Pretoria, but from what I read, these things are happening around maybe Johannesburg, KZN in maybe Durban. Help us posit where the flashpoints are? And why do you think that time and again we get these triggers by these elements who fan the embers of xenophobia?
Thank you very much. You can be more correct with your analysis in terms of the roles that many African countries have played in the total independence of South Africa. But right now, let me first, to the point, say that right now Nigeria are not under siege in South Africa. We are currently, the situation is currently under control. The government are working on it. The two governments are working on it. Actually, the priority right now is to ensure the safety and well-being of every citizen, including foreigners. What we have seen is a kind of isolated tension, and that is why it called for caution. But in terms of direct attack or direct siege on Nigerians, that is not taking place right now. There have been some concerns about foreigners in terms of people targeting foreigners all about, but the government have come out to issue a statement on that, particularly the police commissioner have cautioned the people against targeting foreigners and xenophobic practices. So for now, I'm particularly in Pretoria right now, and the situation is relatively calm. Also in Johannesburg, it is calm. So what we had before was an isolated happenings in KwaZulu-Natal in Durban, which was contained and which informed the prompt response by the government in terms of issuing out that directive to the people. And again, we have also issued some advisories which call for caution, and that is basically what it is right now.
So, Mr. Jay, I'd like you to speak to another event, I believe, coming out of the Eastern Cape in South Africa, where some Nigerians of Igbo extraction were reportedly installing, or if you like, crowning a king, which, according to reports, some South Africans used to fuel xenophobia. As a matter of fact, I've seen a South African official condemn that particular action, saying that that contradicts the laws of South Africa. What is the position of the Nigeria High Commission on this? And is it true that this is part of what fueled this round of xenophobic attacks in South Africa?
Thank you. We had that incident precisely on the 14th of March. And we came out to debunk it, that it was not a coronation, it was not an installation of any such. It was just a gathering of people trying to celebrate their culture. But of course, the optics was misrepresented, it was misunderstood, and that is why we swung into action by holding series of diplomatic engagements with the South African government. And we've been working around the clock since that time to ensure that we de-escalate whatever might come out or whatever is the wrong optics that was sent out, or what my reaction of people might be about that. So I would not say that is a trigger, but what I would say rather is that South Africa right now is going to regional election. They are going to have what we call municipal election in November. And I want you to know that since the time ANC lost power, lost majority power in during the 2024 election, some splinter parties have been trying to gain currency in the country. They've been trying to, latch on that to get support so that they also could find their way to the parliament. So because of the regional election coming, some political parties are feeding into things that are not necessarily volatile. So because of that, we've seen some, opposition leaders try to, cash in on the situation by instigating people. And I must say that people involved in this going about trying to harass foreigners are just very few members of the community, which essentially are acting on the dictates of their political sponsors and the rest. And the government has come out to make its position known. And also, Nigerian government, you could see that our foreign minister came out after that incident to issue a statement, which the mission as well as issued a statement to clarify the situation and to say that this is not what it was perceived to be. But essentially, we apologize for any misunderstanding on that. And as a follow-up to that, last Friday, I was in the Eastern Cape with the Deputy Minister of Corporate Governance and Traditional Affairs here in South Africa, with the Provincial Commissioner of Eastern Government, with the traditional ruler of the Eastern Government, to so that the essence of my engagement there is to reassure the traditional community, is to ensure that we, Nigeria and South Africa, our relations remain largely cordial, and that we share so many things in common, rather than isolated case of whether there was a coronation or not.
Well,
Essentially, the situation is calm, even in the Eastern Cape. As in fact, I will follow up that by doing a kind of roadshow in terms of myself and the Deputy Minister walk around the streets of Eastern Cape on Friday, and everything was fine. The shops were open. Nigeria, Nigeria, and they were doing their business quite fine.
All right, it will be important to get clarity on what nature of cultural expression that the Igbos were trying to put out, because similar event occurred in Ghana last year that also led to some form of crisis where Ghanaians came out protesting against that action. But more importantly now, I'd like you to speak to whether or not the Nigeria High Commission in South Africa engaged with the authorities over the attacks that we have seen, and some of them were very violent, inhumane, in which foreign nationals were being confronted and asked to present their immigration papers, and even when they did, they were still beaten by a mob, and it appeared that even police authorities were complicit in the attacks that went on unchecked. So did the Nigeria High Commission engage the police authorities, and were Nigerians, part of those who were attacked in this round of xenophobic attacks?
Thank you. We've been actively engaging the authorities, right from the period. And as I said, what you saw in terms of what is in your optics, in the social media, there are so many, optics being put there. Some of them are not even right now. I wouldn't say that the police are complicit, and I wouldn't say that the government are involved in that. But what I would say is that we've been engaging together with the government, with the authorities in South Africa, to de-escalate whatever might come from the. And as I mentioned, that these are being, fueled by political opportunists. Those people you are seeing, they are few. They did not represent the entire South African community. They are just people acting on their paymasters, and we have to ensure that we take priority the well-being of our people, particularly in Nigeria. We take it as a priority here. We have engaged with the authority, as I mentioned. There was a high-level meeting that happened on the 8th of April, where we engaged and we have had reassurance. A lot of reassurances from South African government, and as a follow-up to that, we have issued a lot of advisory to our people in terms of remaining calm and respecting the local laws and customs. So based on that, we've done that, and we continue to engage. And I mentioned the fact that I was in the Eastern Cape last week to as further engagement to consolidate on our previous engagement. Concerning the type of cultural gathering that the Igbos are doing, Nigeria, we are people of culture. It was a gathering to celebrate, I understand, the New Yam Festival, and and in that gathering, I think because of the digital age we are, some people put it up in this thing, and it was misunderstood. Remember that South African people, they watch Nigerian movies, and when you mention some words in Nigerian movie, they could easily connect with that. So that's where the misunderstanding actually came from.
So, in terms of the advisory that you're giving Nigerians there, what are you telling them in terms of where is safe and where is not safe? Because we've seen videos of people being beaten, whether they are it's mistaken identity or not. But we know that, the authorities usually give citizens, either the ones even coming in, imagine someone's come from Nigeria or another country, wants to go to South Africa. So where is safe for them to visit? Where is not safe in terms of advisory now?
Right now, the entire country is safe, but there are some isolated spots where we ask our nationals, particularly any day we heard that, we get an intelligence that there is going to be a march. We advise our nationals to remain calm, not to open their shops wherever we find that it's going to be volatile. And we also ask them to always be on the good side of the law in terms of respecting local laws and customs. You understand? And we have also advised them to remain actively engaged with the mission and as well as the local authorities in terms of any threat to life or properties. So we've issued that, and as I mentioned, the police, the Commissioner of Police in South Africa has also came out to issue a statement, cautioning South Africans not to engage in unnecessary attack against foreigners and to caution them against xenophobic tendencies. The Home Affairs, that is the Minister of Interior here, has also come out to also issue similar one. So in terms of our own, we've readily, because you find Nigerian almost in every region in South Africa doing legitimate businesses. So we've asked them that wherever there is any likelihood of a protest, then they should try to be on the side of the law, remain engaged with the mission, close their shop when it's becoming volatile. And I must say, Nigeria are not particularly being targeted. It is what we are seeing now is isolated confrontation with foreigners in general. You understand? And the authority and Nigerian government are actually actively engaged in this.
So specifically now, what are those areas, those hotspots to avoid? So I imagine the Nigerians who are also maybe traveling or planning vacations. What are some of those hotspots to avoid?
I would not actually specifically point out at a particular place to, but because this, as I said, the situation is calm. It's relatively calm as I speak. Many people are coming in. People are going to Cape Town. Even over this weekend, I heard there's going to be a Nigerian wedding in Cape Town, and the situation is under control. The hotspot, we can say, are those areas where maybe foreigners are doing businesses, which some miscreant can want to come in spontaneously. It's not that the entire region is engulfed. So I would not say issue a direct advisory that don't go to this area, you go to this area. No, because the situation I'm seeing that is in my hand right now is calm, relatively calm. But of course, there's need for caution, just like in any situation. That's why we ask our people, whenever you see potential threat or anything, try to get to us. And since we have read the situation and see that it's not a direct attack on Nigeria, it's not that they are going specifically, it's some of these are few individuals that politicians are sponsoring. And as at this morning, I even understand they are holding a meeting because we had intelligence authority that there's going to be a march, they call it a march, in Pretoria tomorrow. But right now, as we speak, I'm in touch with them, and I heard that there's been a lot of disagreement with that, and they are holding a meeting to cancel that, particularly as the police commissioner has issued a statement. And I must say that then one thing I want to say, today is South African independence. And you know, they call that Independence Liberation Day. So people interpret this Liberation Day in different ways. You understand? So, and, you know, I will not specifically say that Nigerians should not go here, should not go there, because what I'm seeing right now is a relatively calm situation.
Mr. Ajayi, we hope he stays calm so we don't get this incident happening again, because it looks like, as you said, when elections come, some of these other parties that have made its way to some prominence are beginning to see what they can do to hit up the polity, to get a seat on the table. But we hope that this will be resolved as soon as possible. Tokpa Ajayi is the acting Nigerian ambassador to South Africa. Thank you, sir, for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so let's take a look at what you are saying across the social media. And I think we mentioned this in passing. We talked about the incident that happened in the United States White House Correspondents' Dinner that was supposed to take place yesterday, but was disrupted because a shooter came in and wanted to perhaps harm one or two persons, but it was apprehended. So that's the moment. You can see Donald Trump, the president, and the vice, they were on the table. You can see the details, security details, the FBI trying to surround and protect the president when that gunfire was heard outside. So the docks, you know, that's why we understand part of security measures to make sure that table is elevated so that when things like this happen, they can quickly dock, and they took them out immediately. So, guys, Obukola, you said it's a man with 9 lives. That's CNN that was give us that good shot of both sides.
Yeah, but there have been many angles to that particular event, and I was quite impressed with you know, the dexterity that security officials were able to protect the President of the United States of America and took him off stage, you know, from the back. We could see, you know, about 3 details surround him, and in the first shot we saw, you know, Vice President J.D. Vance himself hurry off the stage and went backstage. But you know, it was an event, an engagement with journalists. It was called a Correspondents' Dinner, and you know, and that's a rare informal engagement with top officials of the United States of America. And we've often said that even amid the ongoing conflict in Iran, we've seen President Trump engage with reporters, you know, just before Air Force One takes off, we've seen him engage with reporters, even while in the aircraft is engaged with reporters. So those are some of the shining examples of one of the leading democracies of the world that we can, you know, copy, we can adopt, and you know, have our leaders more transparent, engage more with the media, such that critical questions can be asked, you know, about the state of the nation, the state of the economy, the state of our finances, and related issues. But we're glad that that event was nipped in the bud, and the said shooter, or the one who wanted to disrupt the event, has now been taken into custody, and I believe he will be arraigned today. Jeffrey Coyote.
Well, I know people have also asked questions about why J.D. Vance was taken out first or protected first before President Trump was protected. You know, and we're not going to get into all the protocols and all of that, but let's talk about something right here in Nigeria. So we've had the presidential candidate of the Labour Party in the 2023 election, Mr. Peter Obi, expressing concern over what he described as a growing pattern of cancelled academic engagements in Nigerian universities following the sudden withdrawal of a scheduled lecture at OAU. He disclosed in a statement that was posted on his official handle, and according to him, he was billed to deliver a keynote address at the institution by 9 a.m. before proceeding to Ibadan for that political summit, the opposition party's political summit. But he says he was informed at the last minute that the university event would no longer hold. But he didn't stop there. He also said that his alma mater, that's University of Nigeria, Nsukka, has also, well, done the same thing to him in a manner of speaking. So he's wondering what exactly is going on, because at the University of Nigeria, there was a planned lecture in honor of former Vice Chancellor Frank Dili. He says it was also called off on the scheduled date. So a lot of people were asking questions, particularly of OAU. So what exactly is going on here? So we can tell you there's a statement now that has been released by the authorities of the OAU, that's Obafemi Awolowo University, Ileife, trying to clarify the circumstances surrounding the proposed lecture by Mr. Peter Obi. The statement says that a particular group within the students' body extended an invitation to the former presidential candidate. But then, according to the statement, university authorities were not duly informed of the status and caliber of the invited guest until Friday, just a day before the scheduled program. This statement says it is important to note that events involving high-profile personalities require adequate prior notification to the university authorities, so it would enable the institution make necessary logistical and security arrangements, proper liaison with security agencies, police, DSS to ensure safety of the guests. And it says, well, the university is committed to supporting intellectual engagement and hosting distinguished personalities. So we'll call out Jeffrey. This is what we have.
You know, it's just an amusing response. I think it's a lame excuse. If you are a university and you are giving your facility out for whatever it is, there are different layers of, you know, invitation. So what is the protocol of the university, the OAU? Great university, by the way. What is your protocol? If for instance, if I, Jeffrey, wants to do an event and I say I want to use one of the halls or the famous hall, what will be asked of me? Would they require me, okay, who are the guests, what's the caliber of the guest and all of that? So if there's no why I would believe what they say is I need to see their rule books to say, okay, this is how they, because if somebody has put an event a long time ago and you just wake up to say, oh, this caliber of person is coming, so we're going to cancel. How does that even make sense? I don't know how it makes sense to me at all. Maybe they have to do a bit more explaining, because their position is that somebody of that caliber coming, they need to prepare, and I agree. There are certain persons that will show up, you need to prepare. But what was done, maybe you didn't do your due diligence or ask the questions before that event happened. So something is wrong with how you give permission for your facility to be used. Because now you're going to fall into the trap of politics that maybe you've joined people that are denying the opposition the opportunity to use facilities, just like happened in Abuja, and that's not what the university is supposed to be noted for. So I think it's neither here nor there, but they have the right to respond to whatever it is they do. So what I'm saying is that going forward, we must be careful, because everything now will be interpreted as politics, and politicians will take advantage of it. So you have to be careful on your own end, not to be used for political or as a political playground. And
Jeffrey, while we await what's in the rule books on the protocol for organizing public events in the Obafemi Awolowo University, we can also call on the university authorities to ensure that the event is then allowed to hold subsequently, now that they know that it's a high caliber person that is involved in this event, and then there'll be no interpretation as to the intention behind the cancellation.
And that's it of the program. Thank you for your time and company. I'm Jeffrey Uzama. Bye-bye.
It's South Africa Day, according to the Nigeria High Commission, and so let's remind South Africans and everyone on the continent, Ubuntu, I am because you are. I am Bukola Koka. Bye for now.
And I am Kayode Okikulu. Have a great day. Sunrise Daily is next right here in Abuja.